We love talking about space in Central Florida, and Blue Origin is one of the main companies making those moves. We're going to talk about some of the contracts they've landed, some of the partnerships they have with the state for some big projects they have going on, and unfortunately, some major news that happened recently related to the state of one of their rockets. We'll talk about this, Blue Origin, space, and more on this episode of The Business Backdrop. Hey there, welcome to The Business Backdrop with Orlando Business Journal, sponsored by Edition Financial. My name's Richard Bilbao, Editor-in-Chief of the Orlando Business Journal, and we got a great episode to talk about space, Blue Origin, and a lot of what's happening with that big company on our Space Coast. But first, as always, we want to make sure to cover some of our top headlines of the week, things that are important to you, so we'll roll right into those. The Sons of Westgate Resorts founder David Siegel have purchased an iDrive attraction at a discounted price. Brothers David Alexander and Daniel Siegel closed on an $8.5 million purchase of the former Sleuth's Mystery Dinner Show property on International Drive. The 5.37-acre site was previously on the market for hotel redevelopment potential, with the approval for about 275 rooms. The Siegel brothers have been expanding their business interests through Florida Grand Developments and other ventures since 2020. And if you're a foodie in town, know that the Michelin Guide has added some new Central Florida restaurants, including its first nods for Brevard and Lake counties. 7 Central Florida eateries have earned Michelin's recommended designation for the first time, including June in Orlando, Coco in Cocoa Beach, and 1921 Mount Dora in, of course, Mount Dora. Also, in case you're wondering, Baldwin Park Restaurant Sorakawa has retained its 2-star Michelin status. It's the only one in the region to still have that status. And last, we're heading over to Lake County for a growing community church which bought some land in Lake County for $3.3 million. The Heritage Community Church of Central Florida purchased 13 acres in Fruitland Park. Lead pastor Sidney Brock cited the facility has become outgrown and nearby residential development as reasons for the expansion. And overall, in case you're wondering, national church attendance has declined sharply since 2012, yet local congregations appear to be still healthy. And those are the top headlines of this week. And now we're going to take our discussion to the coast and talk about big space news right after a word from our sponsor. We'll see you there.
When it comes to meeting your short and long-term saving goals, you need a financial partner focused on helping you, not their bottom line. At Edition Financial, we see the real you. For more than 85 years, we've helped Central Floridians get the most for their hard-earned savings. Compare our saving rates to the big banks, and we think you'll like what you see. And with convenient money management tools and personalized guidance, we make saving easy. Edition Financial, exceptional banking for everyone since 1937.
Welcome back to the break. We're going to dive into our main topic about space and Blue Origin, one of our main contractors in the region. They've recently won a ton of new contracts, as well as they are part of main missions that are happening with NASA on their mission to the moon and beyond. But something that's taken the news world by storm was the explosion of the New Glenn rocket that happened on the evening of May 28th. To talk a little more about Blue Origin, what they're doing in Central Florida, as well as the explosion, we've brought space reporter Riley Benson to join us on the backdrop. Riley, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. Riley, so obviously our early discussions of this topic were about contracts and missions, and we will get to that point, but the world kind of saw something that few have seen before, which was an explosion of a rocket that happened on May 28th. What have you heard about from Blue Origin related to the explosion of the New Glenn? Obviously, there's been some information that's come out. There's still a lot of information that's being gathered, but what do we know so far?
So immediately following kind of the explosion, they just kind of said it was an anomaly, and they really didn't provide too much detail. Very late in the evening on June 1st, the CEO of Blue Origin posted on X, formerly known as Twitter, that, the tower on site, one of the main towers, was damaged, but it doesn't look like it's going to have to be taken down. They can kind of focus on repairs, as well as a lot of the kind of fuel tanks and things are okay, as well as this launch was for the June. They were planning around June 1st to have another New Glenn launch, which would have been the second for the year. And so the kind of cargo that was going to be on the rocket for that mission was not at the site. So all of the Amazon satellites that were going to be launched are all safe as well. And so there was also a water tower on property that is also safe as well. So it looks like they are going full steam ahead. He also said on the post that Blue Origin is planning to go they're aiming to launch again by the end of this year. So that is that's going to be a really quick turnaround. A lot of experts were saying like if that they weren't going to launch again this year. In 2016, SpaceX had a similar situation where they had a rocket blow up on the pad, and it took them, from reports that I saw of news outlets at the time, it said that it took them about 4 months of an investigation into what happened, as well as more than a year into repairing the launch pad. So if they do launch again by the end of this year, that would really be a really quick turnaround for them.
Yeah, doing a lot of research myself and reading it, I'm a space nerd, so I like to read this type of stuff, were those questions like what happened to the launch pad? What kind of damage was sustained? How long does it take to rebuild a new rocket? Like, people were estimating millions and billions of dollars, as well as months and delays. And, when it comes to these types of facilities and assets and infrastructure, the thing that always comes to mind is, and again, I'm not the rocket scientist here, but I mean, like, it's a lot of space is very delicate to like specific changes. Like, so I'm sure the launch pad is designed to like millimeters or whatever that is. That's that it does, just so it's made sure it's super flat. Everything kind of fits in it. So the thing that always was intriguing to me was you can't just rebuild. You can't just pour new concrete on a launch pad and not take the time to make sure everything is scientifically put together. You obviously probably saw a lot of the activity and discussion happening on social media. What was some of that those exchanges you were seeing from folks maybe who were in the space industry or experts that closely follow it, like in the hours or days after the explosion?
I mean, I think the response that got the most clicks was probably Elon Musk just side saying, rockets are hard. Which is true. Space exploration, these commercial space, it's really just blown up within the past couple of years, but everything is still very experimental. Like, it's in uncharted territory. They don't really know what they're doing despite all the experts on board. And so things like this, while it is like a horrible situation, especially like, they blew up a rocket, but it'll allow Blue Origin to learn from it and really be able to see like what happened and be able to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
Yeah. So, before we move on to some of the projects that you've been writing about, what's the curious thing for you as someone who closely watches Blue Origin, coming after an explosion, how they're trying to navigate it? What is it that you're closely following just from your own expertise on it?
I would really be interested in seeing how quickly maybe they file some permits to see like how quickly they are beginning construction. I'd be really interested in seeing how much this is going to cost. They haven't said any type of numbers. Experts have said, it could be millions, it could be billions. So I'd be really interested in seeing how much this is going to cost them. And so, yeah.
Prior to the explosion of the New Glenn, there was a lot of news that you had been reporting, wins that Blue Origin has had, specifically a $188 million contract. So before I ask you about the economic returns, what was that contract that they got from NASA?
So the contract that they got, which, this only happened 2 days before the explosion, it happened the Tuesday before, it was a $188 million award to help NASA out. They were selected to help with the moon base and send some lunar rovers, I think, to the moon. Mm-hmm. And so there was potential for even more outside of that 188 million, depending on the success. I think they said it could go upwards of 200 million, depending on how far it goes. And a couple other space companies were selected as well. And so this is really coming forth as NASA's really going forward with the moon base plan, which I think they said previously is planned to, cost billions of dollars they're investing into exploring the moon.
Mm-hmm. How do you see from your reporting that the economic returns from something like that, $188 million? I mean, that's, in a world of defense, as crazy as it sounds, $188 million isn't a lot. But I assume, is that like space jobs? Are those like engineers? Like, from your expertise reporting this, like, what is some of the return we get from these type of contracts?
So for Brevard County, a lot of the Blue Origin's growth is directly impacting, potential, hires and hiring more engineers. And obviously a lot of their success they've recently had is connected to other projects they have going on. They recently announced that they're going to hire 1,000 more employees as part of a over 800 square foot building expansion called Project Horizon. And so that's bringing in more employees. That's bringing in, more money to the area. Outside of that, like even with the New Glen explosion, I've talked to some experts and they said, as it's all hands on deck, they're probably going to hire local general contractors that are familiar with the area to kind of get things back to the way they were before and continue to piggyback off of their previous success that they've had.
You mentioned Project Horizon. Like, do we know what that is yet? Or is it still code name and so it's still like a mysterious project?
It's just going to be a kind of massive manufacturing facility that's an expansion of their current campus that's on Merritt Island. I think what they said it's going to be mostly dedicated to manufacturing their New Glen rocket that is kind of pursuing all of this. So that's kind of what they've mainly said it's connected to.
Okay. And as we're watching the investments that Blue Origin's doing with Project Horizon, of course, the contract, and of course, how we're going to see them rebuild for the mission. We've also seen SpaceX. You mentioned SpaceX in terms of some of their activity. How have you seen that race between those two main players kind of heat up in recent months? Are we seeing kind of the back and forth, the duking it out between these two? And what are you closely watching as those two kind of their race brings business to the region as it kind of relates to us?
Yeah, I think that these two, they're both the main commercial space giants in the Space Coast, but I do feel like they kind of are at different stages of development. As I mentioned, with the explosion, SpaceX had a similar thing happen in 2016. And so, now that Blue Origin is just now having this happen, SpaceX has been able to grow off of their mistakes, and they're kind of maybe a couple years of what Blue Origin is currently experiencing. SpaceX has they have rockets go up every day carrying satellites, things like that, their Starship. And, Blue Origin, they've had one launch this year. They were attempting for number 2, which maybe we'll get. So I think they are very strong competitors, but it will take a little bit more work for, I think, Blue Origin to get to the level that SpaceX is at right now. SpaceX is also working on their Giga Bay, which is just going to be a massive facility on the Space Coast. And so maybe this new Project Horizon is going to try to compete with that in a way. But they're very much each other's competitor. But if they're on the same playing field right now, I'm not so sure about that.
Okay. All right. Well, it's interesting to see. Well, Riley, thank you again. Always appreciate having you on the show. Talking space, always a cool topic. Thank you. And we'll be right back after these words from our sponsor.
When it comes to meeting your short and long-term saving goals, you need a financial partner focused on helping you, not their bottom line. At Edition Financial, we see the real you. For more than 85 years, we've helped Central Floridians get the most for their hard-earned savings. Compare our saving rates to the big banks, and we think you'll like what you see. And with convenient money management tools and personalized guidance, we make saving easy. Edition Financial, exceptional banking for everyone since 1937.
So thank you to Riley Benson for coming on the show to talk about Blue Origin and space and sharing insight on that great story. And that's going to wrap up another episode of the Business Backdrop. So we hope you enjoyed it. Big thank you to Edition Financial for supporting the show, and big thank you to you for always spending your time with us each time we have the show. So thanks for going behind the scenes with us on Business Backdrop. Please like, subscribe, rate our show, and tell your friends about the Business Backdrop. And you can always find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever else you get these shows. And as always, we'll see you next time.